Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your dedication to history.
Hey, I gotta apologize for that because I should have.
No,
Supervised.
hey, things
Right.
things happen. That's fine. No way. I really do. I like something where I can get down closer. And I was speaking last night, as some of you folks here know, and one of the things I liked about it was could be up closer to the people I was talking to. I like that. It reminds me of when I was teaching, and that's the way I like to teach, and that's the way, so I appreciate this. It gets a little harder when the place is more filled up and some of them are sitting back there by this is much better. Today I'm doing two talks. The first one, they're both short. The first one is especially short, but hopefully you'll find them informative. And if this thing will keep going. Finding Rockford's first Euro-American resident and the problems with reading and writing, reading cursive. I know some of you, just about when I look around here, you people have all been involved in some kind of historical research, and my handwriting sucks. I mean, when I write something, there's a 50-50 chance the next day I'm not going to know what it was. But I mean, when cursive writing is done well, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it really is beautiful. And I think learning cursive writing teaches people precision and discipline, and I think it's a positive thing. I hope that the schools get back to doing it again. Although my own lessons didn't take, but I mean, with so many other people, they did. But that's one of the problems with a lot of people. The lessons didn't, and it gets to be hard to read what they've written. And I'm sure that you guys have run into that yourselves. What have they written? What does it say? And it shows up in what we're going to be talking about here in this first little short talk. If that thing can quit jumping around. Okay. Hopefully you guys are acquainted with, or you should be in the near future. If not, you're acquainted with this particular book. Do you guys sell this now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. This is the Trans-Appalachian Wars, 1790 to 1818. It's by John Vining. And it's a very good book, very interesting book. And John, in doing his research, found out a very interesting piece of information for this particular community. He was able to tell, is this thing a little off focus here? Maybe that's as good a focus as I can get. But he was able to tell. Turn it back on. That's why I talked to him when he was a student. Yeah. Oh, you guys haven't? Okay. Turn it off. Don't presume to do these things, Lucas. Okay. But on that, I know the printing's hard to tell there. This is, again, from John's book here. And he found that at this location here, in 1790, there was a trading post operating, actually before 1790 from here. And he identified it as being done by a man called Le Sommer. And that, back then, I need to walk up. Back then, of course, there's a reason for a trading post being here then. Native Americans, you had some Native Americans living here permanently, like a Mohican village around somewhere a few miles from the crossing here. And you had other Native Americans coming here every year in the late fall and winter in order to hunt furs. And so there's a reason to have a trading post. If you're interested in accumulating furs, with a lot of these French traders were, they're going to be here. And one was. I mean, this was a key site too, because it was a crossing of the St. Mary's. And what John was looking at was the journal of this particular man right here, General Josiah Harmer. Harmer led an expedition through here in 1790. It's part of the American effort to claim the Ohio Valley. He is heading toward Kekiunga, Fort Wayne, where Fort Wayne is today. Fight the Native Americans there, passes through here. As he's passing through, he notes that there was an old trading house located here, and the name Lasomer comes up associated with that house, and that's in Harmer's journal. So, geez, why is this thing doing this? But this is the original on Harmer's journal right here. This is the original journal. And again, I want to get myself up here. Move back. But get up here. You can see about the third line down. That's Lasomer. You see that written there? Now, this guy, my handwriting, to give you an idea how bad it is worse than this guy's. But third line down right at the beginning, Lasomer's old house. It seems to say that. In 1913, a guy named Basil Meeks, historian Basil Meeks, was translating or transcribing that. And this is what he wrote at the time. This, from Harmer's journal. A disagreeable day, encamped on a branch of the Omi near Lasomer's old house, 135 miles. FW. FW stands not for Fort Wayne, but for Fort Washington, which is at Cincinnati. Lasomer's old house, 135 miles. So one way John's getting this is the distances between places, between there and Cincinnati, and between Gertytown, St. Mary's, and here. He's looking at those distances. And he's coming up with that badly watered. This morning, a Shawnee was taken prisoner by the horse. Mr. Morgan arrives. So this is what he's writing about there. Now, and so this is where they get the basis for the name. But this is where we run into the problem with this guy's writing, and how with Harmer's writing and with Meeks's transcription of it. Because this is 11 days later. This is October 14th. Harmer has marched up to Kekiunga, and basically the Indians beat him up there. And now he's retreating back, and he's writing again. He's come here. Well, let me kick on to the other one, which is easier to read. Cloudy today, sent off Mr. Britt this morning before we started an express to the governor, marched 11 miles at Fort Wayne, marched 11 miles this day, 35. When he talks about the ruins of 35 miles from M-Town, that's Kekiunga, Miami town. Encamped on the waters of the Omi. Now, this is what he's writing this time. Lasomse's old house. Again, before you got Lasomer's old house, or at least this is how Meeks is transcribing it. And then when you move forward here, now he's back at the same place, and Meeks is transcribing a different name. So this is where we run into a little problem. And again, this is what you can run into with doing cursive when they're sloppy writers. Okay. So we've got Lasomer and Lasomer. So we got those two names. Problems with both of them. Lasomer and Lasomcre Neither one of those names move anywhere. They go nowhere. You look at the historical records. I mean, I can find Shane's name. I can find Medore's name, those guys. And not just at this site, but I can find Medore up, Anthony Medore, who was one of the other early frontiersmen who were here. I can find Medore in the 1790s up in Michigan. I can find Shane before he comes here over in Indiana. You can't find any of these guys anywhere. Nada. Nil. And. Names mean something. Surnames mean something. Your name means something. English and French names mean something. And where do they come from? Well, some names are based on patrilineal. They come from a father somewhere back along the line. So you have like John's son. When you see Mac, Mac means son. So anytime you see one of these Irish or Scottish guys with a Mac in their name, Mac Namera's son, Mac. That's a source of it. Other names, occupation, tailor, mason. I don't know. I was looking at a few things. Shoe means shoes, doesn't it? Or a shoemaker. Again, based on an occupation in the family a while ago. Minnick means monk. And it's given to people who are either monks themselves or work at a monastery. That isn't a monkish personality over there. Location, hill, wood. The Anthony Shane family, the Chains originally. The original family name of Shane's great-grandfather was Pierre Saint-Onge. Saint-Onge is an area is a town in southwestern France. Mr. Van Tilburg. Mr. Van Tilburg. Van Tilburg means from Tilburg. That's a town in the Netherlands. Sometimes it's about a physical or personal trait. Strong, short. Chain, his later nickname is based on a nickname the family picked up, Oak. Frech. Frech means bold, but not in the positive sense. It's like obnoxious bold, mouthy bold. It's descriptive, I can't help it. But, so to get the right name, we need to go to some other sources because Harmer was not the only one keeping a journal on that expedition. And so we see a lieutenant in his command, Ebenezer Denny. And this is it. And what Denny's writing is almost exactly what Harmer's writing. I mean, on October 13th, this morning, a patrol of horsemen captured a Shawnee, marched through thick, brushy country, and camped on a branch of the Omi near the ruin of, now this name means something, on the ruins of La Source's old house, about 135 miles from Fort Washington. La Source. We have other sources that go along with La Source. 4 years later, when Wayne comes through the area, a captain in his command, a captain named John Cook, writes about La Source's old trading post. The year before Harmer came up here, Arthur Sinclair, governor of the Northwest Territory, wrote to Harmer saying, contact La Source. La Source has been trading with the Indians. He knows about where they put He knows about where they've put their hidden supply, corn supply at. So who the heck is La Source? Now, we go back to the French and their settlement in America. The French are going to settle a large part of the interior of America, of North America. And they're going to get here, they're going to come down the St. Lawrence, and they're going to found towns like Quebec and then Montreal, and then they're going to move into the Great Lakes, and they're going to found towns like Sandusky and Detroit. And people like Anthony Shane's ancestors and Louis Godefroy's ancestor, John Baptiste Richardville, all their fathers and grandfathers, they came down from Detroit and intermarried with the Indians. But. That's not the only way that the French came into America. They came up the Mississippi, founding settlements up. And you get places like Mobile was started by the French. New Orleans, started by the French name. Baton Rouge, Red Stick, started by the French. Terre Haute, high ground, started by the French. St. Louis, started by the French, named for a French king. And one of the little settlements they started was at Kaskaskia, which should be on the Illinois side of the Mississippi. And I guess it's not there anymore. It's been, the river changed course and it kind of wiped out where it was, but it was a settlement like that. And the La Sources were a family there involved in trade. Now, I couldn't find the exact La Source that was here. The most likely one, given the ages and the trade, was this guy, Jean-Baptiste Thermidor de La Source. Got an example of reinforce that idea. I know Brett Jones has done some exploring around town, and he found a counterfeit Spanish real from 1782. Back from 1763 to 1802, the area we call the Louisiana Territory, back then, the Spanish won it in the French and Indian War, in the 7 Years' War. They won control of it then. They're issuing the money. And so if you were coming from Kaskaskia, you're going to probably be using that Spanish money. And so, that kind of reinforces the idea. In 1782, that's a long time before Shane's going to be around here. I mean, La Source is here 30 years before Shane shows up. But again, effort reinforced this idea, and Mr. La Source was the first person living here. Don't know the exact location, but again, from this description, he's here. But, oh. Okay. So let us, any questions? Or we can ask them at the end or forget it.
Kind of interesting talking about how both the French and the here a long time before other Europeans. But have you ever heard the theory that the Welsh were the first ones here over in the Louisiana Purchase area out in that direction? You ever heard?
You mean like those runes they found up in Minnesota or whatever and that stuff? Yeah, I'm acquainted with hoaxes, sure.
I just listened to some guys. Of course, Meriwether Lewis supposedly committed suicide.
Yeah.
But then they doubted because he had 2 gunshots, and then they claimed that his diary had pages ripped out of it, and it had something to do possibly with so-called Welsh settlers. hear this kind of story.
Interesting name you brought up. We will see something about that. Not particularly this hoax, but the incident you're mentioning. Yeah.
I have a question. It's kind of off of this, but you said a counterfeit Spanish reality.
That's what I understood. I've never seen it. Mr. Jones told me that he thought it was
a counterfeit. I don't understand how you would counterfeit a reality. Somebody else stamped it.
Yeah, it would be done the same way, and what they'd make sure of was they were using an awful lot cheaper metal than that. That would be the basis for it. If it was, I don't know what I can't tell from that, but I imagine they were made out of silver, and you would cut that silver with something else.
Oh, okay.
That's when you're doing coins, that would be the way to do it back then. Yeah, that would be the value in it. But okay, and again, we're kind of taking a step back here, but beginning of the 18th century, there are almost no Native Americans living in Ohio. The Iroquois have driven them all out because they want to use the land as hunting grounds. And then the Iroquois sign a treaty with the French, and the area becomes open for Native American settlement again. And these tribes all move in: the Miami, the Shawnee, the Delaware, the Iroquois, the Ottawa, the Potawatomi, all move in and take slices out of what is today Ohio. And at the end of the American Revolution, the British, who claimed to own this land, sign it over to the Americans, and we want to take claim to what has been given to us by the English, but there are a large group of people out here that would disagree that the English had the land to give away. And so as the Americans are attempting to take the land, you get an Indian opposition, basically a Native American confederation formed to oppose them, and led by these men: Little Turtle of the Miamis, Blue Jacket of the Shawnee, Tarhee of the Wyandotte, Bougainvilleas of the Lenape or the Delaware. So they're there to oppose them. So the United States makes its attempt. We've already mentioned Harmer being set up here in 1790, and he's defeated. And the year after, a man we've already mentioned, Arthur Sinclair, leading a larger but less disciplined army, less well-equipped army, marches up here and, of course, gets to have the worst defeat in the history of the American military fighting the Native Americans. 3 times worse in number dead than Custer's was. But finally, the United States finds somebody of quality to lead their troops. Mad Anthony Wayne, but this time he's not so mad. He's very methodical. He takes not months to prepare, but years to prepare and train his force and to build up basically a force that overmatches the Native Americans, so that a lot of the Native American leadership begins to realize they can't beat these guys. That's why Little Turtle withdraws from leading the Confederation, because he knows what's coming. Well, he begins to march north, and along the way he's building forts. And at the end of July, they're in Mercer County, down by Beaver Creek, and marching up from there. And on August 1st, they reach the St. Mary's. Lieutenant John Bowyer, in the command, writes this at the time. Camp St. Mary's, August 1st, 1794. Proceeded our way before sunrise, arrived at this place at 3 o'clock, being 12 miles. They've marched 12 miles that particular day. Encampment is on the largest and most beautiful prairie I ever beheld. I mean, people in Dublin Township and into Union Township, I mean, that is not a description that he's the only one that says. I've read several descriptions from members of that expedition who write the same thing. that they're really impressed by how that particular piece of land looks out around there. I didn't know that Mercer was that close to heaven, but land rich and well timbered, water plenty, but not. And this has an effect. It doesn't really consider it that drinkable. 40 to 50 yards wide, if you can imagine the St. Mary's being 40 to 50 yards wide. I'm told there are plenty of fish in it, which we will see in a minute. Next day, August 2nd. August 2nd, Boyer writing again. Legion detained here for the purpose of erecting a fort, which will take 3 days. Now, when they got here originally, they crossed the river and camped, and then they made a decision to move back onto the south side. And one of the reasons is that they'd found a freshwater spring over there, and they thought that would be a good source of water for the fort, because there were problems with drinking the water out of the river. It will take 3 days. The army originally camped on the north side and planned to build a fort there, but finding a freshwater spring on the south caused the army and the fort to be moved. The soldiers not involved in construction went out, and they basically went into the river, and they were able to catch enough fish to feed the whole command. They just bring a net down there and head up the river, all kinds of fish. The river itself, river had a lot of different names. It was called Kettle River by the Shawnees because it was a trade route. You could go up to Fort Wayne and buy items from the French, and kettles were considered very valuable back then by the Native Americans. And it was called, by the Miami, it was called Sturgeon Creek because of the fish in it. All these guys are stuck there while they're building it, and a lot of them, the fort's not that big, so a lot of them are out and around. And they're exploring, and as they explore along the river, they find abandoned native wigwams because the Native Americans, again, come down here in the fall and winter to hunt. They have wigwams down here as temporary structures to live in. They find a lot of those along the river, and also they find cabins. The Mohicans that were down here lived in cabins. They didn't live in wigwams. They were more acculturated than that. And then they also found LaSource's old houses. That's what John Cook was writing about. And of course, the Moravian Mohicans had fled out here after the Gannett massacre. They also found large cornfields. But back at the construction, while camped at the site, General Wayne was injured and nearly killed. A tree fell through his tent. There was some suspicion it may have been an assassination attempt orchestrated by a second in command, General James Wilkinson. Wilkinson had been working to undermine Wayne. He had been slowing down the supplies, and he had been writing critical letters about him to Henry Knox, the Secretary of War. Now, the thing about Wilkinson, he's a real piece of work. He later will become the leading commander, the top general of the U.S. Army. At the same time, he is a paid secret agent of the Spanish government. He's a spy. Later on, he will be involved in the Aaron Burr, Vice President Aaron Burr's conspiracy to do something. We don't know exactly whether it's invade Texas or get the western states to break off from the rest of the country, but he's involved in some kind of suspicious activity that's going to get Aaron Burr charged with treason, although they're not able to convict him. But basically, Wilkinson, being the charmer that he is, first is involved in the conspiracy and then betrays the guys he's working with. And He is. He is. There is suspicion that he was involved in the death of Meriwether Lewis. That Meriwether Lewis might have been bringing information about him. So a lot of people lined up to kill old Meriwether Lewis, and of course, I don't know. I think one of the favorite theories is he killed himself, but went to Natchez and didn't come back. Now, the fort. The purpose for the fort. It's part of this chain of forts that are being built. And they're there to protect the communication and supply line for the Wayne's campaign. Now, I'll put it this way. When we look at the dimensions of this thing, 24-foot long walls. You have 2 blockhouses. Now, if we were looking at the orientation of this, I mean, there's the river. River's going north-south, and this is setting south of the river, facing north. The 2 blockhouses. Within the fort, there's a headquarters for the commander, and there's a guardhouse. And up above, in the top left corner, there's the spring that's attracted them to this site. The spring that can be a source of fresh water. There is a great fear there that the Indians are going to attack. Fort Recovery has already been attacked twice by large, like each time by 1,000 Native Americans. Each time the attack was driven off. So they are expecting an attack. The commander there is Lieutenant James Underhill. They screw it, James Underhill. I mean, they really do. They give him, this is what he's left with. He's given 50 men, 30 of them are either invalids or cripples. So he's only got 20 guys that are able to do much of anything. And Wayne's army left before they finished the fort. The guardhouse and the headquarters don't have roofs. And there's no gate on the fort. You can walk right in. They got to put up a gate. Underhill is depressed, to say the least. He is expecting an attack from the Indians. And when I say he's depressed, this is, he is personally hoping that the Indians will tomahawk him and his men before he has to commit suicide. I mean, he is in the gutter. But Native Americans are around, but they never attack. There's never an attack on Fort Adams or Fort Randolph. I got to be specific about this. There never was an attack. Again, messengers were killed around in that area, but the fort itself was never attacked. Being by the river ends up being a very important thing because the river gets to be the supply route, and for 7 or 8 months a year, it's usable. I mean, sometime during the winter, it's going to freeze over, and they're not going to be able to use it. And sometimes it's just going to be so low on water, they're not going to be able to use it. But for a part of the year, and it's the best route because what's to the north? There's a swamp to the north. So once Fort Wayne is built, this is a major way along the river to supply the fort. What? Okay. The fort was originally named Fort Randolph. And Edmund Randolph was the first Attorney General of the United States. And then when Thomas Jefferson resigned as Secretary of State, the first Secretary of State, then Randolph got the Secretary of State job. He was the second Secretary of State. But it was decided that since they'd named all these other forts for a lot of different people, they'd never gotten around to naming a fort for John Adams. And so they switched the name from Randolph to Adams. The author, where's my book? It's around here somewhere. Oh, here we go. The author of this book, Bayonets in the Wilderness, which is probably, no, it is the best account of the Wayne campaign. I would suggest it. But this is what he had to wrote about the name change at Fort Adams. On the name change, a squalid, puny, insignificant second-rate post was changed to Fort Adams so as to recognize the importance of the vice president. You know, that's a cut. That is a real cut. But by 1796, 2 years after it's built, it's abandoned. In 1800, Charles Murray is here. He's trading with the Indians at Fort Adams, he and his Native American wife. Charles Murray was hiding because he was accused of murder at the time. Later, he will be one of the men that found St. Mary's. I mean, what it had been Gertytown and then becomes a real village, is he's one of the founders of St. Mary's. Again, during the War of 1812, it's used as a storage site in a storehouse, so supplies can be brought up the river again to Fort Wayne. It's abandoned again. Subsequently, from something I found in research, local farmers stripped it. They took the logs and they used those logs to build fences for their farms. Supposedly. This is a shot of the site in 1902. Its description is being in the Section 24, Dublin Township, looking northward across the St. Mary's River. Picture taken in August 29th, 1902. It appears in Charles Slocum's History of the Maumee River Basin. In the early 1990s, Michael Pratt came down. Michael Pratt was an archaeologist, a professor of archaeology at Heidelberg University here in Ohio. And he brought his crews in to dig at Fort Adams. And they're here at 93, 98, 99, and 2000. When they came down in 93, I had that information about the fort being dismantled, and he asked about it, and I brought it out to him. And they asked me if I wanted to be in the dig. And I was there for about a half an hour. And I didn't mind the snakes, but the mosquitoes drove me crazy. I couldn't take that out there. So I unvolunteered myself. But again, over that time, what did he find there? The presence of Wayne's Legion at the site, this is from his report, the presence of Wayne's legions at the site was confirmed by the occurrence Federal Type 1 and Federal Type 2 buttons. You know, when the United States government begins under the federal system with the Constitution, you know, they're starting to have their uniforms, and those would be the first two sets of buttons that go along with those newly issued uniforms, which Wayne's troops would have been wearing. They go in, man, this goes right over my head, but using the spatial analysis extension with the ArcGIS 8, I'm very well acquainted with that piece of equipment, right? Right. But the artifact distribution, they found some artifacts there, not a lot, because that's a swamp out there. I mean, it's a big mud hole. It's not the best place to save, especially metal things, for a long period of time. They found a few. But artifact distributions were used to determine the probable location and orientation of the fort. As a result of this investigation, the location of the first post erected on 1794 campaign was archaeologically verified. So they found the site. And I'm sure we all know the turnoff there. It's on, like I said, it's on the south side. So you're on the south side of the river. If you go up there, a few hundred yards along the bank there, that's where it was. I'm gonna have to. I don't know why you folks down here hate this sign. Well, I shouldn't pick you guys individually, but people in Union and Dublin Township hate this sign. They shot it to pieces twice. Somebody finally stole it, and they gave up trying to put one up out there. You just can't have nice things, I guess, or whatever. But with that site was marked, and there was an attempt to put a heritage thing there, but heritage sign. But it is not. They were not successful. But Fort Adams, significant and puny Fort Adams. But thank you very much. Yeah. Yay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you each individually. Thank you.